The room went completely quiet. Everyone was staring at the young black teenager standing in front of the judge. She looked calm, even though people had been making fun of her just minutes ago. Judge Patterson, known for being mean and looking down on people, had spent 20 minutes yelling at her and laughing at her for trying to be her own lawyer. "You think you can fool this court?" He had laughed, his voice echoing through the room. "A child playing lawyer? This is a real court, young lady, not a school play." But something about the girl's quiet confidence made people lean forward in their seats. She didn't look scared or upset. Instead, she stood straight and tall, wearing a simple navy blue suit that her grandmother had helped her pick out. Her hair was neatly pulled back, and her brown eyes were clear and focused. When she started speaking, her voice was strong and clear, like someone who knew exactly what she was doing. She began taking apart the other side's case piece by piece, showing she knew more about the law than most grown-up lawyers in the room. She quoted old court cases that even the judge hadn't thought about, explaining how they proved she was right. People in the room couldn't believe what they were seeing. Some whispered to each other, others just stared with their mouths open. The judge's face changed from looking mean to looking confused and worried. "I object," one of the lawyers interrupted, his face turning red with frustration. "Your Honor, I think this person isn't who she says she is. This has to be some kind of trick." The teenager turned and looked at the lawyer with a small smile that showed she wasn't worried at all. "Your Honor, I can show you my papers if you need them, but everything I've said is legally correct. Should we continue?" Judge Patterson's face turned red. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice shaking. The girl reached into her bag, pulled out a clean document, and handed it to the court officer. The paper was passed up to the judge. When he read it, his hands shook, and he tried to speak, but couldn't. Everyone waited, holding their breath, wondering what could be on that paper that made the tough old judge look so shocked. Let's go back to where it all started, to understand how this young girl ended up standing in that courtroom, facing down a judge who thought he knew everything. The story began in the quiet neighborhoods outside Chicago, where Maya Brooks lived with her grandmother Clara in a small but cozy house with a garden full of flowers. Maya wasn't like other teenagers. While her classmates were watching TV or playing games, she was reading thick law books that most adults found boring. She had been doing this since she was 7 years old. By the time she was 12, she was going to the local college to debate with university students about complicated legal ideas. But Maya didn't show off how smart she was. She kept quiet about it, preferring to blend in with other kids her age. Her grandmother Clara, who used to teach at the local elementary school, would often sit with Maya in their small kitchen, sharing cups of hot chocolate and life lessons. "Being smart is a gift," Clara would say, stirring her hot chocolate with a spoon that had been in their family for generations. "But it's what you do with that gift that matters." One day, while helping her grandmother carry groceries home from the corner store, something she did every Wednesday after school, Maya heard someone crying. The sound came from near the checkout counter, where a woman was talking to the kind-faced cashier who everyone called Miss Betty. The crying woman was Teresa Carter, a single mother who lived in the apartment building down the street. Maya had seen her before, always rushing to catch the early morning bus with 2 small children in tow. "I don't have anywhere to go," Teresa sobbed, her hands shaking as she held on to the counter. "I've paid my rent on time every single month. I've never been late, not once. But he says I broke the rules. I didn't. I swear I didn't." Maya felt her heart sink. She put down her grocery bags and walked closer, listening as Teresa explained that her landlord was trying to kick her out. The landlord claimed she had too many people living in her apartment. "It's just me and my babies," Teresa insisted, wiping tears from her face with a tissue Ms. Betty had given her. "He's lying because he wants to raise the rent for someone else. My kids need a home. They need stability. I can't do this to them." Maya's mind was already working, thinking about all the tenant rights laws she had read about. She stepped forward, her voice gentle but confident. "Miss Carter, I couldn't help overhearing. Have you kept copies of your rent payments and your lease agreement?" Teresa looked surprised that a teenager was talking to her about such grown-up things. She nodded slowly. "Yes, I keep everything in a folder at home. My mama always taught me to save important papers." "Let me help you," Maya said firmly. "I think we can fight this. What your landlord is doing, it doesn't sound legal." Teresa looked at her in disbelief, then gave a small, sad laugh. "But you're just a kid. How could you help?" Maya smiled, a smile that showed wisdom beyond her years. "I've heard that before. Trust me, sometimes the people others underestimate are the ones who can help the most." Over the next few days, Maya spent hours at Teresa's small apartment, spreading papers across the kitchen table, while Teresa's kids played quietly in the corner. Maya read every document carefully, taking notes in her neat handwriting. She found lots of problems with what the landlord was doing. The lease agreement was full of illegal rules. The landlord had changed rent amounts without proper notice. He had ignored requests for repairs. Maya wrote everything down, building a case piece by piece. She wrote a letter to the landlord, using legal language she had learned from her books. She explained exactly how he was breaking the law and what would happen if he didn't stop trying to evict Teresa. When the landlord ignored the letter, Maya helped Teresa file a case in small claims court. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. People started talking about the teenage girl who was standing up to one of the biggest landlords in the area. Some people thought it was amazing. Others said she was asking for trouble, but Maya didn't care what people said. She kept working, kept studying, kept preparing. She knew this wasn't just about Teresa anymore. It was about all the people who got pushed around because they didn't know their rights or couldn't afford to fight back. The story of Maya's fight spread far beyond their small neighborhood. The Justice Collective she started grew into something bigger than anyone expected. More volunteers joined, lawyers, community organizers, regular people who wanted to help. They started helping families all over the city, then the state, then across the country. Maya's phone would ring at all hours. "My landlord cut off my heat," one caller would say. "They're trying to double my rent without notice," another would explain. Each time, Maya and her team would jump into action, using the law to protect people's rights. Years later, Maya Brooks became known nationwide as someone who fought for people's housing rights. The Justice Collective had offices in many cities, helping thousands of families keep their homes. Laws started changing because of their work, making things fairer for renters. Though some people still tried to scare her sometimes, with mean phone calls or threats, Maya never backed down. She had learned that fighting for what's right isn't easy, but it's always worth it. Because every time someone like Teresa Carter found their voice and kept their home, the world got a little better. In her old neighborhood, the apartment building where Teresa lived became a symbol of hope. The landlord, who tried to kick everyone out, was gone, and now the building was owned by the people who lived there. They took care of it together, planted flowers in the front, and made sure everyone had a safe, clean place to live. Maya's story became a light of hope for people everywhere. It showed that even when things seem impossible, one person who's brave enough to stand up can make things better. And that fighting for justice, no matter how hard it gets, is always worth it. Sometimes, Maya would visit her old high school to talk to students. "Never let anyone tell you you're too young to make a difference," she would say. "Every big change starts with one person saying, 'This isn't right,' and deciding to do something about it." And somewhere in the city, in a cozy apartment with pictures of smiling children on the walls, Teresa Carter would tell anyone who would listen about the teenage girl who saved her family's home and started a movement that changed thousands of lives. She wasn't just fighting court cases, Teresa would say. She was giving people hope. And sometimes, hope is the most powerful thing in the world.